Well, afternoon, everyone. Putnam, Executive Director of the Sundance Institute, and Robert Redford, actor, director, the founder and president of the Sundance Institute. Okay, why don't we?
Well, look, yeah, just spend a moment on that. First of all, what I don't want is for that, I mean, I expect there'll be some response or some questions about it, but I don't want that to get in the way of why we're here. This is very important to me and to the staff here. So let me just speak frankly about how I feel about it. I think that, first of all, the film that I made with J.C. Chandor is a film I'm very proud of. It's independent, so it conforms to why we're here. That gave me great pleasure. I love working with him. We premiered his first film at our festival, so there was that connection. It was so stripped down of elements that are in most films, like voiceovers, dialogue, special effects. It was, for me, more of a pure cinematic experience. I love that. But also, almost more than anything, it gave me the chance as an actor to go back to my roots and the way and where I started. So I'm very happy about that film. Now, the fact that the film did not cross over into the mainstream, into the more commercial parts of our industry, it didn't. And I think that probably Hollywood, spend a moment on Hollywood. Hollywood is a business, and it's a very, very good one, and I have nothing but respect for that. I've been a part of the Hollywood film industry for much of my career. I'm very happy about it. So this is not so much about Hollywood. Hollywood is what it is. It's a business. And so when these films go before to be voted on, usually they're heavily dependent on campaigns that the distributors provide. There's a lot of campaigning that goes on, and it can get very political, but that's okay, because it is a business. In our case, I think we suffered from little to no distribution. And so as a result, our distributors either, I don't know why. They didn't want to spend the money, they were afraid, I don't know why, or they just were incapable. But whatever, we had no campaign to help us cross over into the mainstream. So I suspect that has something to do with it. I don't feel, would it have been wonderful to be nominated? Of course. But I'm not disturbed by it or upset by it because of what I just said. It is a business and we couldn't conform to that. So having said that, what it does connect to is the fact that I was so happy to be able to do this film because it was independent. And it stood the chance of having a wider distribution had they stepped up. So that's what's on my mind, is the chance it gave me, and I'm really happy about it, and I will stay happy about it. The rest is not my business, so it's somebody else's business. I'm fine. Okay.
Well, I think we know how the room feels. The one accolade I did want to mention is about 2 months ago in November, the state of Utah, the governor of the state of Utah, hosted a tribute for you.
That was a surprise.
Right. But it speaks a lot to both you as an actor, you as a Utahn, but also to the influence that you and Sundance have had in the state. And how the state of Utah has really I think, grown very fond of having you here. So.
Well, that was an honor. I mean, that was not an honor I expected, to be sure. But when I think about it, and I think about bringing the film festival here, a lot of people wondered, a lot of people questioned that. And I said, look, I might have differences. The state and I might have differences, political differences or otherwise, but it's a great state. And it's a beautiful state. Otherwise, why did I come here? I came here because of the beauty. I came here because of the state's particular history, the pioneer history. So I wanted to preserve that at Sundance, but also I wanted to add something that would create a new dimension. And so I said, let's make this festival, which normally would have been, I think, the obvious place to take a festival like this would have been either New York or Los Angeles. And I said, well, let's go to Utah. Let's put it in the middle of the winter. Make it weird. You know, make it weird and strange for people to get to. Maybe that'll be something. But also, and probably more important, it was a place to put this new concept of independent film, which I never saw as an other from Hollywood. I never saw it as a counterpoint to Hollywood, as much as an add-on, creating opportunities for new artists to come and have a place to develop, have a place to show their work, and share that with the state, and then see what happens. You don't know how anything is. You have no idea how things are going to work out. And while we're on that subject, then you want to talk to other people, but one of the things that I feel probably is a good thing now is to clarify who we are. There was an article recently in a paper that seems to suggest that Sundance wasn't what it could be or what it was, and they were implying that was because of box office receipts. That was because of the lack of financial this. That's not who we are. It's got nothing to do with who we are. We have nothing to do with that. We're nonprofit. Our job and our role is to create a space and a platform to bring new voices and new ways of seeing the world using independent film to this place. That's it. We're not interested in the money. That's somebody else's issue. So that person was wrong, and I thought, you know, when I read that article, I said, well, I better start clarifying, you know, why we're here and who we are.
Well, I mean, this is the 30th year that Sundance has been running this festival. How do you think the mission has either grown or maintained in that time?
Well, God, you were 30 years in, and I think if you strip away 30 years, and I think the history and the product pretty well speaks for itself in terms of independent film and the opportunities we've given people. The other night I was at a New York Film Critics Award thing, and I looked out and I saw just about everybody that was receiving awards. You know, David O. Russell, you know, Alphonse Cuarón. I mean, they all came through our lab. They all came through our festival. We sponsored them. We introduced them through their independent film work. Now, they crossed over. So over 30 years, I think if you looked at all the people who are now working, who came through with our help, that gives me great pleasure. To me, that's more satisfying than anything. Since we're nonprofit, money's not going to be an issue with us. So when I see that, I think, well, we've done something right and good. Now, that's 30 years. And I think Keri and John can speak to it in terms of documentaries. That's going to be coming up this week. That's very important. Maybe you guys.
I just wanted to add, just in terms of how things have changed in the last 30 years. I don't think the mission of Sundance has really changed at all in the last 30 years, in the sense of, you know, understanding that we exist to support the voices of artists and help them get their stories told and get their stories seen. But we have seen a really remarkable evolution of the programs in terms of finding different types of storytellers to support. So we added a documentary program, which we're going to talk about in a minute. We started with feature film screenwriters and directors. We added a documentary program, a film music program. We work with playwrights. We have a theater program. And now we have 18 labs every year at Sundance. And we support 400 artists through all of our programs each year. So it's grown, but the mission has remained the same. And I think it's also interesting that a lot of those labs are international. So, yeah.
I think in general, what I've seen from the festival side is just increased excellence in originality and the creativity of the artists themselves. And we've seen the birth of a community. We've seen more filmmakers that started here with a short, and then they came with their first feature. And now they're all, the premiere section of the festival is peppered with people who've had their careers here. So instead of people jumping ship and running off and taking other things, they're staying with this notion of independence and the spirit of that, and taking it into work that satisfies not just an industry, but satisfies an audience. So we've seen that. We've seen a heightened aesthetic excellence in the films.
Well, you mentioned the documentaries, and that's as good a place to start as any. The nominations this morning, of the 5 documentary feature nominations, 4 of them played here last year. That must
job,
be
programmers.
That just means next year none of them will. So it's I hate to get too much glory and all that, but sure. That's a reality.
right.
I think
It's
that's
exciting.
been
We're
true
very
to the
excited.
credit of the programming team. That's been true for a couple of years. A lot of, maybe not 4, but consistently, the documentaries here are fantastic, and you guys do such a great job picking.
And they're very different. They're all different kinds of documentaries. When you look at Cutie and the Boxer, what that is, that's the encouraging part, is that the world is accepting nonfiction in these really interesting ways.
I'd like to add one thing here about this, the word community. In the beginning, the Sundance Lab, I started in 1980. And that was just simply for development, and we had it over at Sundance at our place. And it was just a place for new artists to have a place to come and develop. And I would bring colleagues of mine who were pretty much in the mainstream, who were writers, directors, cinematographers, editors, and so forth. Would you come and help? What came out of that, our idea was to try to help them at least develop enough where they could develop their skills enough to get their films made. Okay, so then what we discovered, they were getting made, but there was nowhere to go because the mainstream was not allowing any space for independent films. So then I thought, well, geez, what if we created a festival and had it nearby, had it here, and maybe Park City would be a good place because they have an infrastructure that we don't have, and we don't want that large. But the ambition was simply to create a community of like-minded people, filmmakers, to come and have a place to share their own work. We never had any idea about where it would go after that or if it would go. There was a pretty good chance that nothing would go. And so, but it was meant to be a community, and also because of the incredible belief we have in documentaries, we would include those and shorts and create a compilation of parts of film. And all those filmmakers could come and share that work with each other. And at least we would have done that. We would have created a space for these filmmakers to come and share the work with each other. Maybe, if we were lucky, somebody else might come. But that's as far as we had planned. We did not know or expect anything after that.
Okay. One last thing before we give it over to the audience questions. One more thing out of the Oscars: the animated film Ernest and Celestine, which you all programmed for the Sundance Kids new program. Tell me a little bit about the Sundance Kids aspect of it.
It's something that we've been thinking about for a long time, and it really comes from a notion that you're going to see much more of, I think, through the whole institute, is the notion of creating a young audience for independent film. I think you can skip a generation, and I don't think we can afford that. So we want to make sure that we're sort of forward in the trenches of turning young people on to sort of this very exciting medium of film, and how it can be different from Hollywood, and how it can be personal and exciting and different views of America and the world. So that's where we started. So we started with 2 films, and then lo and behold, this film got nominated today. That we weren't expecting that either, but it's a good film.
All right, so we'll start taking some questions from y'all. And who do we have here? Right here.
Redford, I just want to ask you a little bit about the vision Hi, Leon Lazaroff from the Street. This is on Street.com. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the business side of independent film. You mentioned obviously Hollywood being a business. Right now, independents are seeing shorter theatrical releases, the need to find VOD, Netflix sort of being an 800-pound gorilla. Where do you see it going as far as the ability for films here, large and small, to be able to essentially to turn a profit, to be able to make money and continue doing their thing?
Well, I think I spoke a little bit to that issue by saying that there's some part of this that's not our business. Our hope, we always want the best for the filmmakers that come through, but there's a doorway where we stop, and because of the nonprofit status and the fact that we're just about development and creating opportunities for filmmakers to have a place to come and at least show their work. We don't go beyond that. So in terms of this whole business thing, that's why I mentioned that this article was just wrong, because that's not who we are. We wish them well, but we can't follow them there. So if whatever happens with those films is sort of, it only has with it our hope. It's kind of other people's business after that. You know, people like Harvey Weinstein, you know, a guy like Harvey Weinstein, who always had a high regard for independent film, and he used independent film and his commitment and passion to it to elevate it. That's where it's now going to belong. It goes to the distributor, and independent film, unfortunately, is really at the mercy of distribution, and that's a tough nut. But we have nothing to do with that. We just feel that our job is to provide the opportunity for the stuff to be seen. So the business part of it, if this does answer your question, it's our hope, but not our business anymore.
And we have to think a little differently, too. The way we think at Sundance is we think of impact. When you look at something like Invisible War is changing policy, when you look at Blackfish from last year, changing awareness is actually changing how things are done in our world. That's another way. It's one we rarely talk about, but it's as important as how much money they make, and actually way more important to us. I just think, you know, I think the health of independent film, we keep trying to tie it to this, but with all the platforms, and we can't count them because it's impossible, but I think on the aggregate, I still have a sense that more independent films are being seen by audience. And that's where I take the success feeling.
Yeah, I want to add to that, because while I completely agree, and we all agree that the distribution isn't our business, I do think supporting artists is our space, and we support them creatively, but we also support them by helping them understand how they can navigate this new, pretty complex and pretty quickly changing distribution space. So we do have a new program at Sundance called Artist Services. It's a couple years old now, but it exists to provide tools and information and resources to filmmakers that want to be independent beginning to end, that maybe want to look out and navigate these digital platforms on their own steam and their own power without necessarily having to go through a traditional distributor. So there are lots of pipelines and ways. Now, we don't do the distribution, but you know, getting films seen is something we believe in, and if we can help empower that and help empower the artists earning some revenue back, that's great. But we're more of a learning organization in that space.
You know, there's another thing I might add to what Keri's saying, and maybe ties in a little bit to your question earlier about, to me, change is inevitable. And so you have a choice. Either you resist it, and we know who those people are. You either resist it or you go with it and you try to turn it into as much positive as possible. And so I think what Sundance is very much about the role that change is going to play in all of our lives. And we want to ride with that wave. So you've seen what's happened since we started, you know, years ago. There was no texting, there was no iPhone, there was none of that. As it's come on, we've made our adjustments to accommodate the new distribution of it. And in terms of financing, look at all the new opportunities that have come around. Kickstarter. Look at all the films that are in this festival that were financed by Kickstarter. Well, that didn't exist. So as these things come, I just want people to know that we go with it and incorporate that into how we see it. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, on Kickstarter specifically, through our Artist Services program, we've helped our artists raise $7 million for their films just in the last couple of years alone on Kickstarter through that program, and we're really proud of that. It's been a great partnership.
This question's for the three of you. It's a pleasure to meet you. How does this year's batch of film in the different sections represent the state of independent cinema after 30 years of the festival?
That's Cooper.
The question, if I, how does the different categories? Oh, this year's batch of films. I think, as I said earlier, I think it's that we're very healthy. I think we've seen such an increase in, like I was talking about, the aesthetic excellence, how the cycle of better cinematographers and editors and casting directors and actually very seasoned professional actors choosing to take roles. I think that all adds for a very healthy feeling in it. We do something at Sundance that we talk about a lot, is all of our categories, as we build the festival, are structured to represent the films that are being made. So we go to New Frontier, which is on more the edge of new thought, and then the premiere sections, which are the returning filmmakers. Competition Next, in particular, is a section of the festival that we love because it's really rigorous and fun to program, but it's also those filmmakers that are on the edge, and they're going to be, the voice of the independent film world in the future. And we started a whole festival in Los Angeles just for those films. Did I sort of answer your question? Sort of? Kind of? Okay.
One right here. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Annie Day. I write for Revolution newspaper, and I work with the Bob Avakian Institute. And I know you've expressed, Mr. Redford, a lot of deep concern about the future of humanity and the state of our planet in different ways, political, but as well as in your films. And I wanted to know if you could talk about whether and if that concern about the state of the world overlaps with the concern about the state of the culture. And not here at Sundance, it actually feels very different, but broader in mainstream culture, it's the celebration of meaninglessness and a commodification of everything. And I just wanted to know how you see that overlap, or if you do.
Well, I think it's all connected in the simple sense that I'm very interested in the new generation coming along. I mean, we haven't left them much to work with. It's always blown my mind that it seems so simple. This is the only planet we know exists like it. And it's our home. It's all of our home. Why wouldn't we take care of it? And the possibility that there's nothing after that. And it killed me that the idea of extracting and the idea of polluting, all that. I said, is anybody looking at the bigger picture that says, if we don't do something, if we don't look at what we preserve and what we develop, because we're a development-oriented society, I get that. But also preservation has to be part of it. Otherwise, there can be nothing left. And so why bring children into the world? Why bring kids into the world unless you're prepared to give them something to work with? That, to me, seems like a very simple equation that never seems to get front and center. It gets thrown this way and that way. But this is about the festival and not my environmental stuff. That's another thing. If something shows up in the film like we had with Chasing Ice, periodically we'll have films that come up that says it, Inconvenient Truth, Chasing Ice, there are others. That will be our way of maybe referencing that, but I try not to blend the two together here.
Right here, in front.
Now Braverman from Asahi Shimbun. We're a Japanese newspaper. China has recently emerged as the largest foreign market for the US film industry. How do you see that impacting the artistic quality of films? We're seeing some Hollywood films adapted to get past Chinese government censors. I know this isn't for Hollywood, but can you talk about the possible impacts of that on freedom of expression in the context of filmmaking?
Who's that for?
Sorry?
Who is the question for?
Oh, this is for you.
Me?
Yes, please.
I don't know that I fully understand the question, but maybe you tell me if this answers it or not. One of the things that's interesting when you look at our program is that how many films are peopled with actors that are working in the mainstream. Many of them have started out at Sundance. We have a lot of pride about that. But there's a reason why so many of those actors are showing up in independent film. And I think I'll leave that alone. But clearly, I've noticed it, this year especially. When you stop and think about some of these actors who are in very, very commercial films in television or film in the mainstream, they're coming over here. I think maybe you might ask them that. I don't think I'm qualified to answer it. But I also don't know that I'm qualified to answer your question.
I'm asking sort of in the context, how you feel about it in the context of filmmaking in general, and the fact that people are sort of catering to a market that has, on some level, a market that has government censorship, has a lot of power now in the film industry.
You're talking about independent film?
Yeah, China.
Oh, China. I'm sorry. I mean, China. I just didn't hear China. Well, I think that Keri, I think probably better person to answer that would be Keri.
I agree with you, Bob. I think it's Keri's. I think Keri should
I'm
answer
in.
this.
I'm all in on this one. I think you were asking for Bob's take on it, so I don't want to. I think I would say that the mainstream obviously wants to get into China, and I don't think it's really our place to talk about, what effect that has on that business. I would just say that I don't think that's. I think that's really about trying to find movies that have broad appeal across every market and every sector, and getting into China is just a piece of that. So I think how that affects us is you see an increasing polarization between what the big studios are doing and trying to make mass market entertainment that can play regardless of cultural specificity in all the different markets. And I think it leaves, for us, I think it leaves an opportunity to think about how in a burgeoning market that's opening up like China, or having an opportunity to sort of, how can we look for the personal independent storytellers in that culture, and how can we as an organization and as a culture find connections with them that might dig a little bit beyond what the mainstream storytelling, I'm sorry, yeah, so that would be my answer.
Talk a little bit about other countries, how we've
How we've gone, yes, yes. So we actually are. We as I mentioned earlier, we're working internationally at the Institute right now. We have a small partnership in China actually with a documentary, an independent documentary group called CNEX there, and we're really proud of the inroads that are happening in terms of the conversations in documentary between Chinese documentary filmmakers and U.S. But it's really in the spirit of broader work we do internationally. We have a lab in India now. We have a theater program that's been in East Africa for over 10 years. We work in the Middle East. We've been there for, I see Michelle Satter in the back. She piloted our programs there probably almost 10 years ago as well. So we believe that our role in terms of the global film culture is to find those personal, distinctive, authentic stories that bubble up out of these different communities and places, and find ways of connecting them with audiences across borders, because that's pretty exciting. I think we're going to see a lot of that here this week. So.
And please pay attention to the World Cinema section of the festival. It's something we worked on a lot, and it takes a lot of outreach. It takes going into communities, finding those pockets of the filmmakers that are like-minded with the American independent filmmakers. And I think you're sort of using catering as like a little bit of a scary word, but I don't think our filmmakers cater to anyone.
Hey, 37 countries represented here in the program?
Yes, 37 countries
Oh, yeah.
represented in the festival.
I don't imagine that this festival caters necessarily. I think looking at the trajectory of filmmaking with this happening.
It's going to be a part of it.
Yeah, maybe it'll be a bifurcation.
Vincent DePaul from the Producers Guild of America, and actor for many years. And what Sundance, many questions is that what Sundance does for emerging filmmakers, cinematographers, like you're saying, is to give them a platform. But what I see the trend is that the more commercial, viable films, they desire to be at Sundance as opposed to the reverse. And can you speak about that? And then lastly, your performance in All Is Lost Is Our Man at the Palais at the Cannes Film Festival, you had a standing ovation, and so many accolades on that.
I was there. That was an amazing night.
That was an amazing night. I'll tell you what my feeling was. it's the only time I've seen the film, was that night at Cannes. And because at least I'm speaking for myself, but I think I'm speaking for other actors, that to me it's so much about the work. That's always been my joy, the work. And I've never, because that's the most important part of it for me, what comes after is almost like other people's business, but the work. So therefore, you don't think about outcomes. If you think about outcomes, you're thinking, you have expectations, and I think expectations are dangerous. So therefore, I only do the work and don't think beyond that. So had no clue how this would be received. Now, so it goes to Cannes, and I thought, Jesus, I think they boo films there, And what a deal to be sitting there in a tuxedo and be booed, So the film plays, we go in, and it was hard for me to watch it because it was a very physical film, and I felt like I had to go through it all over again. But when it was over and the lights were coming, I thought, God, this could go either way. I was not at all prepared for the positive reaction it got. I was thrilled. I was so thrilled I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. I was absolutely thrilled. But I wasn't, it could have gone either way. So I think that's just how I feel about it. You never know.
I got to say, they boo films at Sundance too. They boo films at Sundance as well, which something I forgot to get to earlier. I want to talk
Films
to you
are they going to boo at this year? Is this the question?
No.
Okay.
But the Free Fail program.
Speaking of booing.
Yeah. Talk a minute about that. The idea of failure as a creative strategy.
Yeah, when we sat down in the summer and we go, this is our 30th anniversary, and we thought, do we just breeze through it, or do we do something? If we're going to do something, let's do something different. And I think we talked and let's sort of create a conference of sorts. We didn't know what the subject was, but let's put a stake in the ground about an issue. And we came up with the notion of failure. It's made sense at the time. It still does. And what we really got down to, and Bob talked about this a lot to us, was that whole notion of how crucial failure really is to the creative process, even though we don't talk about it that freely. We tend to cover it up with words like taking a risk and stuff like that, but we don't really accept the failure. So we thought, let's go whole hog. So all the panels that day are going to be on different subjects.
And that day is Monday?
On Monday, yes, Monday the 20th of this fair month of January. And Bob's going to do a panel as well. So then we have some kind of crazy workshops that we're doing, but the thing that was closest to my heart was, I go, if we're expecting everybody to do it, then I've got to do it too. So our programmers got together and we decided, let's play a film that we failed to show the first time around. So we're showing Bottle Rocket. Yes, we did fail to show it, proudly. We're holding our head up high. Luke Wilson's coming to introduce it, so that's going to be fun. He's very charming, and I think it's going to be a fun thing. But we're just kind of making a serious look at what it really means to fail, but also taking a lighthearted approach to it.
And there's workshops too. There's a sort of interactive bit, right?
Yes, and they're up online. I am going to personally take the high kick with the Rockettes. They're coming in. They're going to be teaching a kick line.
They're workshops and things you're destined to fail at.
Yes, and I will fail, and we're going to have some fun with it on Monday.
Well, the beauty of it is if the program doesn't work, you can always say that was the plan.
That's right. I don't know what you're
Clever,
talking about.
Cooper.
Robert, I'd like to there are two things I'd like to talk about. One, mention Michelle Satter. I think Michelle Satter deserves credit that I'm not sure she gets enough of it. She does with the filmmakers. Mm-hmm. Because she's been with them since a year after I started it. She came on board, and we kind of bumped along and evolved together, making mistakes, figuring things out. She's got this lab process work to such a it's so finely tuned instrument. And so I'd just like to share something with this audience, that we had our screenwriters lab here this week. And the advisors are people who are screenwriters who have had some experience in the business. And some of them are alumni, like Quentin Tarantino was here because we helped him develop Reservoir Dogs at our lab. But that was Michelle. And when I was sitting there, because I came in, I didn't come at the beginning, I came in at the end of it, but I came to the important part, which was, it was wrapping everything up, and the filmmakers were talking about their experience here and how much it meant to them, and it got very emotional. And one of the things I thought, well, you know, this is really a reward. This is the reward. When somebody gets something out of what you provided, and when you didn't know it was going to work at all, and then it does, and then you hear people talk. And when I realized that they were talking they were so vulnerable, they were so open, and risking going to tears or doing meltdowns or what have you, it was because of an appreciation that belongs to Michelle and the way she conducts that lab. And to me, that was a real reward. And the other was that if we've provided something at Sundance, I'm happy that the least we've done is provided a safe place. A place where people can be safe to find out who they are and then be who they are. Now, I want to give Michelle a nod. I think she deserves it.
Yay. And agree.
And the other is I want to acknowledge John Cooper, because we hired him out of rehab, and so he's come a long way. He's really come a long way.
And it's been 25 days.
This is John Cooper's 25th year with Sundance, and I think we all owe him a lot because he's got a big load to carry.
Okay, we got time for like one or two more. You in the back.
Associated Press. This question is for Mr. Redford. Tribeca has been going now for 5 years, and it's not very big. What would your advice be to festival organizers for success?
How would you advise other film festivals to be what we are, be what this is now?
I would say don't even try. we are who we are, and we're going to stay who we are, and what anybody else wants to do is their business, and I wish them well, but we're not going to advise anybody.
In the white.
Thank you. Kim Fisher, ABC4 here in Utah. We've been doing a little bit of research on the past 30 years of Sundance, and you guys have really evolved in the past 30 years. In the late 80s, early 90s, I had read that there was a point where you guys were in some massive debt. So what took you from that point to the success you are today? And was there ever a point where you were like, man, we may have to hang up the hat?
I think we can all probably answer that a little bit. I think that this ties into something John was saying about failure, and I'm really happy because John and I talked about this, that I think this is a great thing to introduce at our festival this year. It gets harder and harder in addition to all the amount of films that are multiplying each year that John and Terrific Roth have to manage through. It's not easy. There's also the additional stuff that has to be dealt with. And so I think that it probably better for that question, since we hit spots, we've certainly hit spots along the road where things look pretty grim. We've taken a risk that didn't work. And I think that failure comes into that, how you see failure, and I think we're going to be addressing that. Do you let it stop you, or do you see it as a step along a road towards development and maybe taking chances that do work? What do you think, John?
I think what you do, like what American families are doing right now, you tighten your belt, I remember those times, but you never lose focus of the mission, because that's what's going to carry you on. You know, you can't give that up no matter how much of a struggle it is, because that's what's going to be your blood to take you through. It's the passion of what we do. And if we go smaller or whatever, we always had our eye on that, and we just never faltered. And that was it. And you know, right now we have amazing sponsors at this festival. We have sponsors that are like-minded to us, that do things with us, and we work together. And so that's why we're doing fine right now.
And the happy end of the story is that in the last 5 years, the Sundance Film Festival has generated $375 million of economic activity for the state of Utah. So that's the good end of the story.
Okay, we got time for one more, and we have to wrap up. In the scarf.
Hi, folks. Jake Jacobson, Westwood One Radio. One element of the festival you did not mention today, and I think it's something that elevates the Sundance Festival to one of the great festivals in the world, is your New Frontiers program.
Thank you.
I meant.
You're welcome. I know it was set up to ask the last question. Thank you for that, too. But the brilliant Shari Freelo and her staff curate it. Every year it gets better. I think it reflects what Bob thought 30 years ago of expanding what cinema can be. It's always, never less than envelope pushing and vital and substantive. And it's one reason I'm dragged out of a nice heat of the southeastern U.S. to come every year. How do you reflect this upon the casual film goer and get, I think it's underappreciated, this certain wonderful series. And again, it's as good as ever this year. You never know what you're going to get, but what could you do to help encourage folks who are simply here to see?
John can step into this one also. I can speak about how it came about in the first place. Because we want to keep our eye on the world around us and the changes that are taking place. We had, years and years ago, we had a section there on Wall Street. I didn't say that, did I?
Main Street.
On Main Street. We had a section on Main Street. There was a room where we brought all the new equipment, mostly Sony, because we were dependent on the generosity of other people to survive. And so therefore, Sony was very generous, giving us equipment we could give to the filmmakers. Now, I was sitting there one night and I'm thinking, geez, you know, this is a dead room. This is dead. It's just a bunch of robots in a room that are dead, and there's something missing. And I realized what's missing is the art that attaches to those things. That led to the idea of the New Frontier. Technology was now beginning to drive film and create more ability for things like special effects and so forth. And I could see that high tech was coming in like a big lion and was going to create a lot of change in the business. So we thought, well, how can we adapt technology, but never lose the sight of what's most important to us, which is the art and the artist. That led to the idea of the New Frontier. Let's see what art and the new technology can produce. So that's where that started. And as time goes on, you asked the question about how can you get that word out? Well, we're very dependent. Press, yeah, to a degree. Because we need the help whatever we can get, but it's also word of mouth. I mean, it's about getting the word out. What we try to do is say, please check out New Frontier. It's worth it. It's a space that's got all kinds of new, innovative stuff. Please check it out. The rest is up to you. If it grows, it's going to be because of word of mouth. What do you think?
I was going to say, I think we should talk about some of the highlights this year of it, because it's really exciting.
I want you to explain the big drum over here.
Okay,
Yes.
let's go.
You want me to?
Yeah, you go. Okay. New Frontier, one of the first things we did this year, this is the other half of what you do in a 30th anniversary. We looked at it where we were. We took it from the Yard, which is a little off the beaten track, though a great location for what we were doing. We moved it back to Main Street. It's at the Gateway. You see, we took two pieces that are very large that are off-site. They're going to be satellite. One is Doug Aiken's The Source. It is a structure. It's a freestanding structure that is really examining the source of creativity. It's hard to explain. You have to go see it. It's a beautiful architectural structure with that glows from the inside out, sort of as creativity does.
It'll be sort of a beacon to New Frontier that you'll be able to, I hope, see some of that glow even from other parts of town. It's going to be pretty cool.
And on the front of the Egyptian Theater every night, Clip Collective is doing sort of an amazing piece that's 3D mapping. That's where they map the front of a building with image and change the building's basically facade using moving image. I was with them last night on a freezing cold tent on the front top of the building across the way, and that's going to go on every night on the Egyptian Theater. It's kind of fantastic to look at and easily accessible. And everybody walks by can look at it and go like, that's amazing. Now I start to get it. So we put a lot of thought into this, obviously.
And there are some cool interactive things like the Oculus Rift technology inside the New Frontier space. So definitely everybody check it out.
And the fact that it's on just off of Main, there's a lot more opportunity to sort of pop in for a little bit if you've got a free moment.
That's what we were finding that the pathway is at Sundance. Because you have so many things you're doing here that sort of in and out is very important.
I know we're almost out of time, but just want to add, for those of you who don't know, we also have, for the past 2 years, a lab dedicated to New Frontier work now. So we're balancing our interest in that space by developing new work in that space.
All right, well, everyone, that's all. 2 things, hydration and hand sanitizer. Stay healthy, have a good festival.